So, I'm going to talk to you guys about this version. This is the book that I have. I'm sure they're all the same version, but just for all intents and purposes, the pages that I'm going to be on are at 165, and then there's another one like 168. I'm going to be talking about the stork. I just thought the stork part of the book was kind of interesting because it's not really relevant to the whole story. I mean, if you took that part of the story out, I don't think it would affect the plot at all. But Kurt Vonnegut is so good at relating things to his reader. It makes you feel like you're part of the story, and this is just a part that really connected for me. Now, I listen to this part of the book in the car. I listen to the book and read the book because it gives me different perspectives, so I like to listen and read. So I bought the audio version. If you haven't ever done that, it's really awesome because you can read and listen in the car, in the shower, or whatever, and still listen to the radio, so it's kind of cool. So Harry's wife, Grace, was stretched out on the chaise lounge at some distance from the bed. She was smoking a small cigar in a long holder made from a leg bone of a stork. The stork was a large European bird, about half the size of a Bermuda ern. Children who wanted to know where babies came from were sometimes told that they were brought by storks. People who told their children such a thing felt that their children were too young to think intelligently about wide-open beavers and all that. And there were actually pictures of storks delivering babies on birth announcements and in cartoons and so on for children to see. A typical one might look like this. And so there's a picture of a stork. And Dwayne Hoover and Harry the Saber saw pictures like that when they were very little boys. They believed them too. I thought that was interesting that the only reason he's really bringing it up is to contrast Harry and Dwayne. Harry is such a strange character in the book because he's a transvestite. He's complete opposite at work. He does it on purpose. He dresses in like the most plain suits. And Dwayne lashes out at him even though they were good friends. Other than that, it doesn't really change the plot very much. But it does make you relate to the story if, like me, you grew up watching movies like Dumbo where the babies were delivered by storks. And even though I grew up watching that as a really small child, that was like the movie my mom put on since I was like 2 to 4 when I needed to like watch a movie and go to sleep, something like that. And Dumbo is delivered to his mama by a stork. And I watched that and I knew that babies didn't come that way, but I accepted it, which is funny because maybe 10 years before, when parents didn't tell their kids anything about how babies were made, like in the 60s and 70s, around when this book was probably timed, probably in the 60s, people probably told their kids that, and their kids might have believed it for all. There's no other way to get knowledge. There's no internet, things like that. And I thought that was so interesting that even though all these years later, we're still watching Dumbo, we're still seeing storks, but it's relating to us. And for no other reason maybe than that, that part of the book is just like nostalgia. And for a moment, I'm listening in the car and I'm watching Dumbo. And I'm smiling to myself and I'm thinking, oh, that's so cute. But other than that, there's there's no other there's no other reason for it other than to describe the leg of a stork that's now become a cigar. But now that I'm saying it out loud, this bird was destroyed. This is like a majestic bird. If you've ever seen stork, they're kind of graceful and majestic looking. He's destroyed to become a cigarette holder, which is also a destructive thing with cigarettes. So that's interesting. Moving on to the destructive idea is the um, destructive testing passage in the middle, not the one at the end. So I'll read that one to you. Dwayne was silent for a while. If you haven't gotten this far, I'll set the tone for you. He's talking to Francine after they just slept together, and you know he's lashing out at her, and he's kind of trying to explain to her what's going on. and why he's doing that. And so Dwayne was silent for a while, and then he told her haltingly about a trip that he had made to the headquarters of Pontiac Division of General Motors at Pontiac, Michigan, only 3 months after his wife ate Drano. So it's a pivotal time in his life. We were given a tour of all the research facilities, he said. The thing that impressed him the most, he said, was the series of laboratories and out-of-doors test areas where various parts of automobiles, and even entire automobiles, were destroyed. Pontiac scientists set upholstery on fire, threw gravel at windshields, snapped crankshafts and drive shafts, staged head-on collisions, tore gear shift levers out by the roots, ran engines at high speeds with almost no lubrication, opened and closed glove compartment doors 100 times a minute for days, cooled dashboard clocks to within a few degrees of absolute zero, and so on. Everything you're not supposed to do to a car, they did to a car, Dwayne said to Francine, and I'll never forget the sign on the front door of the building where all that torture went on. Here was the sign Dwayne described to Francine. And here's just a picture. It says destructive testing. I saw that sign, said Dwayne, and I couldn't help wondering if that's what God put me on earth for, to find out how much a man could take without breaking. It's interesting because he views life as destructive testing. He doesn't see any of the good things that happen or things that make him better. Some could say that bad things that happen to you are chances to be constructive instead of destructive, and Dwayne sees them as only destructive. And I thought that was interesting because he's a bitter person and he's losing his mind, and everything is destructive to him. Everything in the whole world that's happening to him. And every bad thing that happens to him is something that's not supposed to happen to a human being because he's equating himself to a car. And it was just really, really interesting to think that he thinks that. And that's what's making him lose his mind, is those kind of thoughts are perpetuating the bad chemicals that are making him go crazy. But Kurt Vonnegut also leaves the idea that the bad chemicals that are in his brain are just a mental illness that he has no control over. So of course he's going to think of things in a negative way because of his illness. But I think Kurt Vonnegut's real message is that we have the power to think about things positively, and it can change the chemicals in your brain to positive, which might be what he's saying. I'm not sure. The other thing that I thought was interesting is I've had those thoughts in my life. Now, they weren't necessarily destructive, negative like that, but I have thought, like, maybe I'm put on this earth just to be tested. I'm being tested by somebody for this and that and the other, and everyone on the earth is put here to test me. So I'm thinking maybe that's a common thread for him, and I'm thinking maybe other people have that thought too. And that's another thing that connects the reader to the story, is that thread of him weaving parts of the story to his reader in so many different ways. And that's why it's enjoyable, not just because it's sarcastic and negative, but also because it makes you realize the positive, and you're relating to it on just so many different levels.